Have you ever asked yourself, what is inflation? This invisible thing that is constantly eroding our purchasing power. If you look very well, back in 2005, with 1000 Kenya shillings, you have already done a good shopping with that and still have some change on it. Comparing to today, the same amount of money can't buy as much as it used to. Why? That is inflation, my friend. In this video, we are going to explore just that and just understand how money is made, how inflation is manufactured, and how we can be in a position of making money for ourselves to save ourselves from this fucked up system. If you think banks they are what you think they are, you should think again. With that being said, let's roll it up. Money as we know it today used to be backed by gold. That means ungeenda kwa any bank with any banknote, you exchange that banknote, wanakupea a piece of gold worth that amount of money that you gave them. That system was called the Bretton Woods system, whereby unapata the government, European government actually trusted the US dollar, and that US dollar had to be backed by gold. This system crashed simply because the US had printed a lot more money than the gold reserve walikuwa nayo, and the European people had grown suspicious about the dollar, so wakakimbia ku withdraw gold yao and such kind of a thing. In 1971, President Richard Nixon had to freeze the conversion of gold, of paper money to gold.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
And that is how we came to where we are at today. That was literally the birth of the fiat currency that we have today. And what is fiat currency? Fiat currency, it is paper money. Yani ni karatasi tu, like unapewa karatasi unaambiwa hii ni pesa, and you have to believe that is money. And if you don't believe that is money, at the end of the day you can go to jail because of that. Literally paper money, the fiat currency, hii karatasi, it's literally an illusion yenye we have agreed upon. It's an illusion. Tumesema okay, this money, this paper is money simply because it is money. The government says it's money, everybody says it's money, so we all believe it's money. So the fiat currency that we have today, it's simply because of belief. We believe that this money carries value, and that's why I can pay you a paper and then you give me some value of it. You see? So that is the fiat currency that we have today. That is how we came here, and we actually believe that a paper is money. That is freaking ridiculous. Fast forward, we have to understand what is inflation. You know, with the Bretton Woods system, governments hazingeprint pesa. There is no way wangeprint pesa more than the gold walikuwa nayo. But today, hii system haina boundaries. Unapata government, they have all the freedom they want. Wanaweza enda print bilioni 10 leo tu, they have just printed 10 billion, and boom, in the economy 10 billion just like that, because that money, it's not backed by anything, and they know very well hiyo pesa imeprintiwa 10 billion, they can give you and it is money. So they believe, they agree that you believe it is money. So and to them that is money, and you have to believe it is money. Literally. So inflation is actually prices going up, literally, simply because unapata bei ya vitu inaenda juu, and you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? And it is because of the printing of money. The printing of money is the issue here. In this video, I want us to understand, how do these people actually print money? How is money printed? How can we be in a position of creating our own money machines and also print our own money? Like, what's up? I don't mean illegally, but printing our own money in terms of making something big. You see, that is what we are going to go through today. And first of all, we have to understand how inflation comes to be. Let's dive into it. Inflation happens when the supply of money is far much higher than the supply of goods and services. For instance, ukienda kwa soko unapata like tuseme time ya mshahara, for instance, a good example, time ya mshahara watu wamelipwa, it is Christmas holiday nini nini and such. People know kila mtu ako na pesa. That means the price of a basic commodity inaenda times 2. That is literally inflation, micro inflation or such kind of a thing. That is what happens in an economy, because the economy is actually regulated by the demand and supply curve, if you know that very well. Kama ulisoma business or such kind of a thing. And that is the basics of our economy. Demand and supply. And when they are in equilibrium, that is when there is harmony in the market. But you have to understand, for instance, mama mboga mwenye tuseme kuko na mama mboga 10 hapo wamepanga laini hapa. That means there's far much high supply than the demand. For instance, watu wenye wanapitia hapo kuchukua mboga ni watu wachache. Unaona? That means hizo mboga zitauzwa very cheap simply because ni mingi, so you have a lot more choices. Wewe ukisema 10 bob, huyu anasema 5 bob, mimi nitaenda kununua kwa 5 bob. That means huyu lazima reduce bei yake. Unaona? The same thing, for instance, mama mboga ni wawili, but wenye wanakuja kutafuta mboga ni kama 200 hivi. So unapata mama mboga amesema hii mboga huku ni 50 bana. That is demand and supply. That is how the economy works. The same thing with money. Pesa ikikuwa mingi kwa economy, when the governments print money, at the end of the day wanapeana pesa mingi kwa economy. That means watu wako na pesa ya kuspend. That means watu wenye wanauza goods and services wanaweza charge more because you have money to spend. So mi kitu ya 5k mi nakulipisha 10k. That is how inflation goes. Boom, and money loses value just like that. And that is why unapata the value of 1000 today, the value of 1000 back in 2005, I mean, if you compare it to today's money, the 1000 in 2005 today, it is worth 5000 Kenya shillings today. That is literally inflation. You need more money to cover the value of that money that you used to have. So that is inflation, and that is something bad. So how does this come to happen? We're going just into that and just understand how it is done. It all starts when you have you vote in a politician who tells you that we are going to build roads for you, we are going to do things for you, we are going to build schools, we are going to build hospitals, we are going to do all of these good things for you and such kind of a thing. And this politician anakuja anawape budget, unaona, anawape budget ya 3 trillion. For instance, Kenya, I don't know if it is around 3 trillion or 4. Anawape budget. The government gives you a budget of 4 trillion or such. After ameingia hapo, ana turn kwa treasury. Anaambia treasury, you know, mimi niko na budget hii, nataka nifanye hivi na hivi na hivi, but hakuna pesa. Pesa tunatoa wapi? Treasury si ati iko na pesa pahali, haijaweka pesa pahali kwa kamfuko ati inapatia tu government ende ufanye nayo. The last government yenye ilikuwa hapo ilikuwa inateseka pia. That means the treasury haina pesa. So what does the treasury do? Au umeisikia vitu kama treasury bonds and treasury bills. So the treasury inatengeneza hizi nini, treasury bonds na treasury bills. After imetengeneza hizi treasury bonds and treasury bills, this is literally national debt. This is money that like wanatengeneza like an IOU, just saying I owe you something. Maybe you, for instance, budget ni tuseme hata hiyo 3 trillion. So the treasury says, I owe you 3 trillion. They sell these treasury bonds to banks, They sell them to the central banks and also to the investors who want to invest. They create an auction. Wanasema, okay, we are selling this debt, so anyone who is interested to buy, boom, you can hop on. So unapata there is these commercial banks that we have here in Kenya, vitu kama KCB, Equity, nini and such. You see these banks comes in, wanaenda kwa auction, wananunua hizi nini, hizi IOU wanazinunua from the treasury. Unaona, if the treasury, like tuseme if banks don't meet the total budget ya 3 trillion, unapata they have to turn now to the CBK, the Central Bank of Kenya, to ask for more money, to ask for more liquidity. The central bank nayo si ati hata hiyo iko na pesa. It's not that iko na pesa imeweka pahali. No, these people have to make money again. You know, you have to understand first, the central bank is a bank for the banks. That means hizi nini commercial bank kama KCB, Equity, nini, they all have bank accounts with the central bank. No. When the central bank creates liquidity in a deposit directly to these commercial banks, and that is how money is actually created. For instance, in the meantime, they don't even have to print it. They don't have to print money like this that you wanapea commercial banks. No, they don't have to. Wanafinya tu keyboard, wanasema we allocate 40 billion to Equity, we allocate 50 billion to KCB, and they normally do this with consideration to how a bank is actually performing. If Equity is performing well in the economy, unapata wanaekewa 40, wengine wanaekewa 70 nini and such, according to how it is performing. The poorer the bank is performing, unapata wanapewa 2 billion, 3 billion and such. So after this money is actually deposited in the central bank, remember this is money yenye imetengenezwa from nothing. For instance, while me and you have to take a loan, we have to take a loan from something that we have in the bank, we have saved. For instance, ukienda kwa sacco or such kind of a thing where you save your money, if you want a loan from that bank, they must look at what you have first, you see. But on the central bank, on the case of central bank, they don't have that money. You know, they don't have 10 or 3 trillion in their bank account. They don't have it. So what they do, they have to make it from nothing. They're literally making a debt. You see, money out of thin air, technically speaking, out of keyboard, and they write that and they give the banks, and boom, just like that, new money is created. Money is in the banks now. So the banks, they normally go and buy more bonds. They might buy more treasury bills and such kind of a thing. And remember, hii pesa yote ni deni. Unaona? That means banks zinataka interest by buying, as a result of buying those treasury bonds and treasury bills. Literally, hii ni pesa ya deni na bado unataka interest kwa hiyo deni. Like, what the fuck? This shit is fucked up. So that is how it goes. Unapata hizo bonds zimenunuliwa, sasa hiyo pesa imeenda kwa treasury. So the treasury sasa imepata tuseme hata 3 trillion ya kufund yule politician mwenye anataka hiyo pesa ya kutengeneza manyumba manini and such kind of a thing. Anapatiwa hiyo pesa and all these projects zinaanza kufanyika nini vitu kama hizo. And remember, this is money that was made from nothing. Hii pesa no inalipa contractors wa kujenga mabarabara, inalipa nini mtu wa mkono pale, and everybody who is hustling out there, maybe walimu nini, ma lecturer, mashule manini. This is money made out of debt. No. It is valueless money, technically speaking, but because we believe it is money, simply because they say it's money, boom, it is money. Literally, it's fucked up. It's that fucked up. That means ukipata pesa inaingia kwa money, a valueless money entering into an economy, that means it has to still value from money that is actually valuable in the economy, the money that is actually circulating, yenye watu wanang'ang'ania, wanapambana kupiga biashara nini nini hivi, money that is actually working in the economy. Hii pesa mpya inakuja ina still value from the money that you have in your pocket, simply because we have supply ya pesa imekuwa mingi, unaona. That is how inflation actually happens, and that is how money is made, that is how money is printed, and that is how inflation will continue rising, and it will never stop. Forget about stopping. So you have to think of how you can make more to be in a position of overcoming it for yourself, because it is only going to get hard. They will not stop printing more money. That's just the first part of all of this. Let's dive into the fractional reserve banking system. The banking system now, it works like this. When you go, tuseme umelipwa na huyo contractor, umefanya nini, umejenga barabara nini nini, umelipwa 20k or such, umeenda ukadeposit kwa bank account. Remember, this bank account, it is regulated by the CBK. And as I told you earlier, all these bank accounts, all these commercial banks, KCB, Equity, Nini, all these banks you use, they have an account with the central bank. That means any money yenye inaingia kwa commercial bank, central bank inaona, okay? The central bank is watching all of your action. The fractional reserve banking works like this. After you may deposit pesa yako kwa Equity, they have the mandate of taking that money and renting it out. So the fractional reserve banking, they take a fraction of your money, that is 90%, 90% of your money, they loan it out, and then the remaining fraction, that is 10%, they reserve it. So in your bank account, so that you can see you have money, literally, but your money is actually out there working. No. That is now the fractional reserve banking. They are taking the 10%, they are keeping the 10% in your bank account. Wewe unaona uko na pesa, but at the end of the day 90% iko nje, ishaenda kufanya kazi. They take that 90% of your saved money, wanapatia mtu mwenye anaenda kuinvest, ama mwenye anaenda ku nini, maybe buying a house or such kind of a thing, see, or maybe even buying the treasury bonds and bills. After they take this money, huyo mtu mwenye amepewa hiyo loan anaenda na nini, remember that person will have to return that loan, because it is actually your money yenye amepewa. Anafaa return hiyo pesa na interest. Anaenda ananunua nyuma yake, ana deposit kwa another central bank, analipa mtu mwingine, anaenda mwenye nyumba anaenda ana deposit kwa another nini, kwa another commercial bank regulated by the central bank. For instance, we uli deposit kwa Equity, yeye amepewa, akaenda akapatia mwenye amenunua nyumba kwake, akadeposit kwa KCB. That means KCB inachukua 90%, ina loan out, inabakisha 10% kwa huyo mwingine. So huyo mwingine anaenda ananunua kienya, anaenda ananunua, anaweka kwa another commercial bank regulated by the CBK, maybe cooperative bank. So cooperative bank inachukua 90%, ina loan out, inabakisha 10% kwa account yako. It happens over and over again, until hiyo pesa yako, tuseme kama umedeposit 20k, hiyo 20k imeenda ikireduce tu hadi ikafika, all of it may loan you out. And remember, all these banks, they are actually making interest, because they took your saved money, they gave it to someone else. Saved money, someone else. Saved money, someone else. That means they're collecting interest on all of this money. Like, what the fuck? Well, your money is just sleeping. You think your money is sleeping, but at the end of the day, your pesa yako, it is actually working for the bankers. You see? That is how the fractional reserve banking works. And that is why saving is for losers. And you will continue losing if you continue saving. Good luck with your saving, bro. Like you're fucked. So stop saving. Think of something else. They do that over and over again until your money multiplies itself like 10 times. Like, what the heck? That is what they do.
Fractional reserve lending. The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the US, it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is, say another person comes into the bank and asks for a car loan of $9,000. At this moment, the bank loans out the $9,000 from your original deposit. It isn't there anymore. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. The money gets redeposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000. The banking system just created $90,000 by loaning out your money.
That is fractional reserve banking and how it works. And at the end of the day, it is actually creating even more money in the system. If you remember, you deposited 20k. Oh no, we deposit 20k nini, like wakatoa 19k wakapea mtu mwingine, but wewe umebaki na 20k. Remember, in your account you have the numbers. You can see the numbers on your screen. You can see the numbers in your screen, but at the end of the day, those numbers, 18,000 is taken out and it is given out to someone else. That means they have created 18k out of that 20k that you gave them, yet you still have the 20k. You see, we mwingine anaenda ana deposit 18k, wanatoa 10%, and they make an extra more money out of that 18k until your pesa yako ishe yote, over and over again. That is what they do. And I don't know how even to say this, but you have to think of how you can be in a position of stop saving your money and think of how your money can work for you. And they are actually making more money than they are even paying you for saving with them. So you have to think about that. That is how the fractional reserve banking works, and more money is being created and more people are being losers because of the same. On the other side, unapata we are working our asses off for this money that was created out of thin air. Like, we are working so hard. Unapata mtu ameenda mjei, ameenda kwa contractor nini. We are working so hard for this money, but remember, we still owe interest to the treasury bonds and the loans that these banks and nini gave out. We still owe those interests. So who does pay all of this? All of this interest comes from the work that you have worked, like the hard work that we have put into the system. For instance, the taxes. When you hear something like KRA or such kind of a thing, what they are doing is that all this money is being taken and it is being used to pay the interest of these bonds and these bills. You see, you are literally working so hard so that they can tax you. After they tax you, they pay the rich with your taxes. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And that is literally what happens. Where are we headed? Today, have you ever heard of something like CBDC? That is the central bank digital currencies. CBDCs. These are digital currencies that we are going to have anytime soon. Anytime soon from now, by the way, we are going to have the CBDCs operating here in Kenya. It might be 10 years, it might be 15 years, who knows? But at the end of the day, CBDCs are coming. And what are CBDCs? CBDCs, as I told you, are central bank digital currencies. And with this system of money, that means the government can see everything that you are doing. What do I mean with this? If you look very well, with a banknote, with the fiat currency that we currently have, unaweza enda uspend tuseme 10k, umenunua sijui kiti wapi, umempatia makaratasi ya 10k, boom. The government doesn't know umetumia pesa yako aje. They don't know. They can't see, you see. But with the CBDC, they can actually see, okay, umenunua hii, umelipa huyu, okay, umetransact saa ile nini. And that means they have more control of how money is actually circulating, and they can actually see, okay, kama wataki ununue something, they can actually block you from buying that thing, you know. They have more control of the finances more than you have, you know. Like, you literally lose your privacy of doing your own things. No. With the CBDCs that are coming, in fact, some countries have actually implemented it. Countries like Nigeria or such kind of a thing, they have actually implemented this CBDC system, and that is a sign that it is actually coming to Kenya. And I've seen that Kenya is actually exploring the same, so be ready for that. And with the CBDC, unapata the digital currency inape the government more control of how money operates. For instance, if they don't want you to be talking, or if they want to silence you, unapata tu wanaenda tu, they switch off your money just like that. They switch off your money and you can't access anything, you see. And like for now, like they have to talk to the banks to freeze your accounts or such. Now they can do it directly from the central banks, and that is the nightmare that we are headed to, the CBDCs. So you have to think about that, simply because we are headed there. Technology is evolving real quick. By the way, hii masaa inasonga vibaya sana, man, and we have to adapt to these times, because at the end of the day, if we stay on the losing side, we are doomed, man. We are literally doomed. And that is all it is, simply because the system, as you know, it is already made for us to fail. It is already made for us to fail. If you look very well, the reason as to why they didn't teach us about finances, they didn't teach us about taxes, they didn't teach us about business, they didn't teach us about how money works, you know. They didn't teach us all these essential things that we actually need out here, you know. Why? Wanajua, they know what they were doing. They don't want us to understand how things are working. They don't want us to see, like, okay, how can I fix myself or such kind of a thing. And at the end of the day, they fed up with crap. They told us you have to go to school and get a job. After you get a job, you pay your taxes. That's what they want. They just want you to pay your taxes and be a slave in the system, in the economy, working your ass off and paying off the taxes. See? And then at the end of the day, you die broke, because, as you saw, inflation is fucked up. And at the end of the day, your employer is not willing to pay you anymore. Like, to them, you are a cost, bro. You know, they are not willing to raise your salary or such kind of a thing. But remember as well, there is inflation. That means you are losing on both sides. You're losing on both sides. You're losing on inflation. You're losing on taxes. You're losing on saving your money in a bank, simply because the bank is rolling out your money and making 10 times more than you're saving. It is a lose-lose for for everyone. So if you understand this game clearly, at the end of the day, you can be in a position of drawing some solution to this. And that's what I want to conclude with, simply because I want to conclude with the solution on how we can be in a position of making money in the system and actually go out there and achieve something for ourselves. How do we actually make money in the system? First, you need to understand that money comes out of value. If you are valuable to people, people will pay you. For instance, if you provide a solution to a problem that people are facing, people will be willing to pay you. For instance, companies like Uber, Airbnb, those kind of companies, they found a problem that people are facing when it comes to traveling, transport, and such kind of a thing. They solved that issue, and then people are willing to pay simply because it is convenient enough to pay for it. Like it is worth it, literally. It is saving you a lot of time, it is saving you a lot of energy. You see, simply because they found a problem and they provided a solution. That is the first equation that you can do to be in a position of making it in this system, as fact as it is. If you can sit down and think because the answers are all in your mind. Answers are all in your mind. If you can't sit down and think, at the end of the day, how can you provide a solution to anyone? You can't. But if you can think about something, be innovative, think of how you can bring solutions to the world, look at pain points, and understand how you can package them and sell them to people. Guess what? People will be willing to pay you simply because you're providing a solution to their problem. And if you look at these companies, how they are performing very well simply because the solution is very convenient to a point that billions of people are willing to pay them. You see, that is why these companies are billionaires. Like they have made billions in a very short time, simply because people are willing to pay them. That is the first thing. Understand how to find a problem and then figure out a solution and then package that and sell to people. That will make you a millionaire in this system, regardless of how fucked up it is. That's the first thing. Second thing you have to understand investing. Investing is another thing that you can do that can help you achieve something. Or maybe beat the game of money, beat the game of this inflation or everything, the game of taxes, everything. It can help you understand all of this simply because when you're investing, you can actually be in a position of making 10 times more than what you invested, literally, without doing anything. Just understanding with your mind, okay, this thing will go like this, that thing will go like that. Understanding things like stocks, understanding things like bonds and bills, help the system. As a matter of fact, help the system. Fuck everybody else. So, understanding investment, stocks, bonds, bills, real estate, everything. With you understanding these kind of things, at the end of the day, you instead of saving your money, now you can be in a position of redirecting your money to growth. You see, you're now operating as a banker. You know, your money is actually growing literally simply because you redirected it to something that can produce value. So, understand investing. That is the second thing that you have to understand. The third thing that you have to understand is business. Business and branding is something that you really have to understand simply because at the end of the day, this is how you package your solution. This is how you package your solution. And if you can't understand how to scale your business, at the end of the day you'll be stuck na kashop kadogo, unakuwa stuck na kaduka kadogo, like you're operating very small simply because you don't know how to scale. But if you understand how to build a business, how to be a leader, at the end of the day unapata una create something big. You create something, a big franchise. For instance, something like Quickmart, something like Naivas, these big companies you see in Kenya, something like Safaricom, all these companies were created from nothing, literally, by a person who just seated down, akafikiria solution, akaangalia problem, and then he looked at solution. A good example ni M-Pesa. M-Pesa back in 2007, I don't know when it was launching or such. It looked to be very simple, but if you look at it today, it is very like it's a great idea simply because it is bringing a lot of solutions to the society, to people's lives. And that's why it is really successful, you see. Understanding how to build a business is one of the basic thing that you need to understand. And building a business, it will all start with yourself. Understanding yourself, understanding how to think, understanding how to see the world in a very different way. And that is the only way we can be able to beat the system, because at the end of the day, kama venye tu nimewaambia, this system is fucked up. And if you can't understand how to beat it in its own game, at the end of the day, you will constantly lose. No matter how many times you play, no matter how many times you, I don't know, you do what, bro, you constantly lose. Why? Simply because the system is made for you to lose, and still you don't understand it. But if you sit down and understand, okay, what are the intricacies of this thing? Okay, how does this thing work? Then you start finding solutions, because at the end of the day, you need to understand the only solution that we have is in our minds, our capacity to think, our capacity to sit down with ourselves and just figure out solution, figure out how to do things, figure out what is happening, how can I do this, how can I do that, you know. If you can't sit down and think, at the end of the day, it's done for you, man. And that is why you see all of these distractions taking people by a trend, simply because things like TikTok, vitu kama football, Messi, I don't know what. All these things, they were created. Pornography, booze, alcohol, smoking weed. All of these things zimetengenezwa as a distraction, so that you don't see the big game behind everything. Umefumbwa tu macho tu, like usione everything. We can't too distracted, you don't think about anything. You just think about I don't know, nani alisema hivi, nani alisema vile. They're just distracting you. And this way, hakuna venye you can find a solution. So you just accept what they say, and it is done, you know. They want you to be mindless, to be dependent and such. So think about that, guys. And if you didn't understand very well, I will link down a Google Doc whereby it will show you everything on how the system actually works. Step by step, you can read through so that you can understand very clearly what I'm talking about. And that way, we can be in a position of going forward and actually achieve something for ourselves. If you stuck to this very end, I'm really, really thankful for you. And I know very well that this is gonna be a crazy one. And if you learned something, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing with your friends so that they can be enlightened too, and they learn and be in a position of going out there and changing their lives. So be the best. Up to see you in the next one. Adios.